Moving on to our next topic, and that is translating flowcharts into pseudocodes. Okay. So, what is a pseudocode? Pseudocode is actually the textual representation of the algorithm's flowchart. It is simply an English-like statements or English-like representation of the code that is required for an algorithm. Now, we have here our notation on how are we going to express our algorithm in terms of pseudocode. We have here, first, it has here read array, okay, read underscore array, okay. So read array is the name of the procedure, okay, so we call that as procedure name, okay, or the pseudocode name. And then, for each pseudocode possible, it could have parameter or parameters inside that procedure, just like the one that you have done in Java when creating methods, okay? You have parameters inside. Now, the difference between our pseudocode and the actual Java code is that you do not have to define the data type of each variable that you're going to use, okay? All of all of uh, all of these variables or all of these parameters, input parameters, are input coming from the user. Okay, so we have here an array. Okay, let's say we have here a variable r, and that is the name of the array, and n is the size of the array. Okay, as you can see, for each parameter, it is separated by a comma. Okay, so notice that r comma n, so that means we have two parameters for our pseudocode read array. Okay, next, for each pseudocode, if you want to have a block of statement, okay, so each block of statement, it is enclosed in it encloses with this open and close curly braces. Okay, so once it is enclosed with open and close curly braces, that means it is a one set of statement. Okay, so this is the beginning of the pseudocode, and this is the end of the pseudocode. Okay, so remember, pseudocode, it is the textual representation of the algorithm. Okay, this is different from the one that we have done on our first meeting, the algorithm 1-1, okay, wherein all of the statements or all of the instructions are written in all English, okay. Now, in pseudocode, we're going to make use of some constructs of programming language. So instead of using the word begin, no need to state the word begin, you could make use of the open curly braces, and for the end is the closed curly braces. Okay? So all of the statements inside the curly braces are the ones that are part of that pseudocode. Okay? Also, you could include comments. So comments are denoted by, just like in Java or other programming languages, it is denoted by slash, asterisk, and asterisk slash. Okay, so anything that is written in between this slash, asterisk, and asterisk slash is considered or are considered as comment or comments. Okay, so comments are not part of the program, or it is not also part of the pseudocode. It is just like something that you want to make some point on. Okay, now, since we're going to translate the flowchart to pseudocode, how are we going to do that? Okay, so if we have iteration or loop having this flowchart, no? So if this condition is true, or while this condition is true, it will perform statement 1. And once the condition turns false, then it will perform statement 2. So you could do that in two ways. You could use while loop, or you could use for loop. So in the constructs for the while loop, you simply use the reserved word while, and then enclosed in the parentheses, you're going to specify the condition. Okay? So just like in programming, the difference is no need to include semicolon. Okay? So while this condition is true, it will perform statement 1. And when the condition turns false, it will perform statement 2. Okay? Now, if we're going to make use of for loop, you make use of for, and then we have the assignment statement. Okay? And then, we have the, it's like a decision, no? Or the final state. Okay? So, we have for I equals 1 to n. It's like in programming, okay? In Java or in C or in other programming languages, having this syntax, no? For I equals 1, ganito siya sa program, di ba? I less than or equal to n, because I is from 1 to n. So, I is less than or equal to n, then it has I plus plus. Okay? So, instead of using this statement, kasi ito po ay programming statement, no? We will use our pseudocode counterpart. We will use for I equals the initial value. So, initial value is 1. And up to the last value, up to, it states here less than or equal to n. So, that means from 1 to n. And then it will perform the statement. When we make use of 1 to n, it's like, okay, you count 1 to 5. 1 to 10, 1 to 11. So, normally, we do that also. If we're going to have that statement, okay, count from 1 to 5. So, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It is automatic that we're going to increment by 1. Okay? So, we could use this one if our intervals I 1. Okay? If we're going to increment the value of I to 1 or by 1. So, ayan. Ma'am, paano halimbawa ang statement ko pabaliktad? Halimbawa, for I, okay, ito yung sa program. For I equals n, and then I is greater than or equal to 1, okay, I minus minus. How can we do that in a for loop? Okay, you could use a for, okay, reserve word. We make use of variable I equals initial value is n, okay? Instead of using the word to, we make use of down, we make use of the word down to, okay? From n down to 1, okay? So, we could do that, okay? If our statement is decrement. Okay. Next, what if we have one-way selection? So, one-way selection, that means it has only an if. Okay? So, it will perform only statement inside the if. So, if this condition is true, it will perform statement 1. Okay? If this condition is true, apart from performing statement 1, it also performs statement 2. Okay? So, whether true or false, it will perform statement 2. Okay? Hindi siya katulad ng two-way selection. Okay? So, ibig sabihin, sa true condition, it will add additional statement. Okay? So, in that case, we have only one if condition, then. Okay? We will explicitly state this word then. Okay? Unlike in programming, wala na yung word na then. Pero sa atin, we will have this then. Okay? If condition, enclosed with the parenthesis, is our condition, and then the reserved word then, and then open and curly braces, inside these open curly braces is our statement 1. Okay? So, whether true ang condition, perform ang statement 1, and then after that, perform pa rin ang statement 2. Kapag nag-false ang condition, it will perform statement 2. So, tama yung ating pseudocode based dito sa ating flowchart. Okay? Moving on, if we have two-way selection, ito naman kapag meron siyang what if hindi naging true, anong ibang gagawin? Okay? So, we will make use of the else. Okay? We'll just include the else statement. So, if condition is true, perform statement 1, then statement 3. Otherwise, if the condition is false, it will perform statement 2 and statement 3. So, in this case, if reserve word, nasa loob ng parentheses yung condition, and then reserve word then, if this condition is true, it will perform statement 1. So, under that if condition is the statement 1. Else, if the condition yield to false, then statement 2 is under the else. Okay? Statement 3 is placed after the else condition. So that means after whether it is true or false, it will still execute statement 3. Okay? So if this condition is true, perform statement 1, then perform statement 3. If this condition is false, then perform statement 2 and statement 3. Okay? So that's the counterpart of our flowchart. Clear? Very good. Next, what if we have multi-way selection? Multi-way selection is like a nested if. Okay? So if this condition is true, this is condition 2. If this condition 1 is true, then we have to test another. If we have to test another condition. Then if this condition is true, then perform statement 1. Otherwise, if condition 2 is false, then perform statement 2. Okay? And then, if it's true or false, whether true or false, still it will execute statement 3. Okay? In the outside if statement, if the condition 1 yields false, then it will perform statement 3. Okay? So, in the counterpart of the pseudocode, we will have if condition 1, then, okay, inside this condition 1 is our nested if else. This one, okay? This nested if. Okay, nested if else, okay? So, if condition 2, then perform statement 1. Else, so when it turns false, then perform statement 2. Okay? So, whether the condition is true, it will perform statement 3. And when the condition is false, it still perform statement 3. Okay? Next, what if we have case? Okay, so if we have case, this is small letters. Anyway, in our pseudocode, it is not case sensitive. Okay, unlike in the programming languages, it is case sensitive. That depends on the programming language that we are using. So, like in Java, it is case sensitive. Okay, so in this case, for the case, we have several variables, no? So we have to check for the value of the of the variable, the first value of the variable. Okay, if it matches, then it performs statement 1. Otherwise, it will test again if it has a match. Okay, or if that value matches the condition or the case, then it performs statement 2 up to statement n. So to do that in a pseudocode, we make use of the reserved words switch. Okay, we have the switch case. Okay, so reserved word switch, and then inside the open parentheses, so switch as a reserved word followed by parentheses. Inside that parentheses is the variable name. Okay, and then of course we have to specify the block of codes that is part of the switch statement. Okay, so we have to check if it is case value 1, okay, case value 2, up to the default value. Okay, I believe you know this, no? Ang difference lang po dun sa ating program, we don't use, in our pseudocode, we don't use the colon. Okay, and we don't use the semicolon. So, you don't have to specify the semicolon and the colons. Okay, so just specify the keyword case, okay, and then the values. Okay, so if the value matches, the value of the variable matches our first value, then it will perform statement 1. Otherwise, it will perform statement 2. Otherwise, it will check all the value of the cases. Okay? Until, if there's no match, then it will perform the statement N. Okay? So, same with our programming language. Okay? Next, we also have different data types. Data types and values of an algorithmic language. Okay? So, in this case, our data types are real number, okay, character, string, or string constant. Okay? So, real numbers are integer constant. So, that means when we make use of integer constant, that is without fractional part or without decimal places or decimal point. It could either be negative or positive. Okay? So as an example of the whole numbers or real integer constants are negative 1, 5, 98. So any number that are whole numbers. Okay? And then for real constant, so real constant, those are with decimal point. Okay? So it could be negative also or positive. Okay? So as an example, we have 0, 0.0, 0, 0.987, and negative 654.3. So these are examples of real constants. It has decimal point. Okay? Or fractional part. While for the character string or string constant, that is a combination of letters of the alphabet from A to Z, capital or small letters, also the digits from 0 to 9, and the punctuation marks. Okay? Just be sure if we are referring to a string constant, that is always enclosed with single quote or double quote. Okay? So, if we have a string constant, lahat ng string constant enclosed sa double quote, double quote, okay, or in single quote, okay? So, you have the luxury, you have the option to choose. It's either double quote or single quote. For as long as you are consistent. So, never do this na you start with a single quote and end with a double quote. Hindi pwede yan. Okay? Or you start with a double quote and then single quote ends with single quote. Hindi rin pwede. Okay? So, if you start with single quote and ends it with a single quote also. If you start with double quote, ends it with a double quote. Alright? So, how do we declare input statements, output statements, okay? So, for our input statements, instead of using scanf or system that for the input, instead of using scanner, okay, we make use of the word read. Okay? So, read. Ganun lang siya kadali. Okay? So, let's say we have to ask the user for the name and the address. Okay? So, whatever value that will be inputted by the user and that will be stored for variables name and address, we simply make use of the words read. Read name, read address. Okay? So, you could do that in two statements. Okay? Two read statements. Or you could do that in one read statement but separate it with a comma. Okay? So, you could have read name, comma, address. Or kung masipag ka, read name, read address. So, if you have 10 variables at masipag kang sulatin, read name, read address, read variable A, and so on and so forth. Okay? Again, for the input statement, we make use of read, and for the output statement, we make use of print. Okay? We also make use of relational operators, okay? So for relational operators, instead of using these words, you don't need to use these words. We could make use of these symbols. So if you want to refer to greater than, make use of the symbol greater than. If you want to refer to less than, make the symbol less than, or make use of the symbol less than, and so on and so forth. Okay? Also for logical operators, for arithmetic operators muna. For arithmetic operators, instead of using the words addition, subtraction, multiplication, division, we could make use of plus, minus, times, divide. Okay? So you could use these operators as well as this one. But for logical operators, never use. Hindi pwede. Okay? Hindi pwede yung dalawang ampersand for and. It cannot be. Okay? You make use of the word and. Instead of using double bar for the or, hindi pwede. You make use of or. The word or. Okay? Instead of using the exclamation point for not, hindi din pwede. You make use of the word not. Okay? So this is our constructs in creating pseudocodes. Next, for the for loop, katulad nung kanina, di ba? We have, if we're going to have only one statement under the for loop, so possible, it's okay not to include open and curly braces before and after the statement. If, again, if and only if you have only one statement. So, pwede, so possible, na you don't include open and close, these open and close curly braces. What happened? Okay? So, if you have more than one statement, just enclose it with open and close curly braces. Alright? So, let's have this. Let's say we're going to write a pseudocode that accepts the name and gender of a person. Okay? So, it accepts the name and gender of a person. And then display hello Mr. the name if the person is male, and display hello Miss if the name of the person is female. Again, our rule, remember our rule in designing an algorithm, okay? So algorithm can be represented using pseudocode, okay? First, we have to identify what are the possible inputs, okay? Inputs natin ay, very good, the name and the gender of a person. After defining the name, the gender of the name and gender of the person, so after identifying the input or inputs, then we identify the output. The output would simply be, hello, Mr. Let's make use of another color. The output will be, hello, Mr. and then the name, or hello, Miss, and then the name. Okay? Well, that depends on. So, again, our output is the string hello. Hello, either Mr. or Miss, followed by their name. Okay? So the process would be, we have to determine the gender. So if the gender is male, it will display Mr. If the gender is female, then we're going to display Miss. Okay? So how are we going to do, difference between the two? Diba? We have here read name, read gender. Pero pag dito, read name, comma, gender. So you could do that. And the rest are all the same. Okay? Or, possible, the name and the gender are part of the input parameter. Okay? Nasa loob ng parentheses. If it is now included in the parameter, no need to write read name, comma, gender. Okay? So, you could specify the input parameters inside the parentheses in your pseudocode name. Okay? So, the rest are still the same. Alright. Question. Very good. No question. So, for your assessment, you're going to write a pseudocode that determines the factorial of n inputted numbers, and you're going to display the result. Okay? As you have noticed, diba, in this case, we have read n. I'll make use of a different ink. Okay? So, read n. And then the statements, yeah? It makes use of the while statement. Instead of using read in, na wala siya rito, nilagay na yung input parameter sa loob ng parentheses. Okay? Our input is only n. So, isa lang. Remember the problem, we're going to accept an integer. Okay? That will compute for the factorial of n. Okay? So, ayan po. Ang assignment nyo na lang ay you're going to simulate this pseudocode. Okay? Either of these two, walang problema. Kung alin ang gusto nyo i-simulate, pares lang din yan. Okay? Yung manner lang ng pag-create ng pseudocode, yun lang nagbago. Okay? Now, in this case, I make use of while loop. Okay? But you could also make use of for loop. Okay? So, napansin niyo mas lesser yung kanyang number of instructions if we will make use of for loop instead of making use of while loop. Okay? Again, that depends on the logic of the person. So, again, yung read n, nawala pagdating dito, nandun na siya ulit dun as input parameter. Okay? So that ends my class or our discussion. So you're going to simulate the pseudocode for the factorial of a number. Okay? So thank you and God bless. See you on our next topic. Bye-bye.